everyone, this is Moni Castaneda. I am a Feng Shui consultant, speaker, and author. My latest book is Room by Room, Feng Shui Secrets for a Happy Life. And today I want to read to you an excerpt from this book. It's in the prelude. And so I'm going to read this excerpt from this book, and then we're going to talk about the way relatives tell family stories over periods of time. This is on page 13, interestingly. I remember feeling the heat of the truck's sputtering radiator behind my 7-year-old thighs, the burning and scalding sensations as the yellow truck kept getting closer to me and my little white bike. My other senses seemed to be heightened, but when it came to hearing, I could only hear the sounds of the engine and the angry screams of the driver behind it. During this bike ride, the road had been getting progressively steeper and harsher. It had gone from asphalt to pavement stones and then to river stones placed haphazardly over the dirt road. The farther we got from town, the rougher the stones became as we went downhill. My small bike was no match for this road. It had no gears and no brakes. I could feel my arms trembling, and I was having trouble keeping it on the path. The driver of the yellow truck kept honking the horn and shouting at me to go faster. I didn't know what to do. I could see my 8-year-old brother about 100 yards ahead of me, confidently riding his larger, newer, more comfortable bike. I wanted to catch up with him, but I knew I was going as fast as I could safely go on my small, antique bike. To the left of this narrow mountain road, I could see the dirt and rock walls that had been cut almost vertically to make room for the road. To my right, an abyss. These were the Andes Mountains, very close to the equator, where the weather changes with every 300 feet increase or decrease in altitude. You could not see the top of the mountain because it was surrounded by clouds, and you could not see how deep the abyss went because the heat of the subtropical rainforest down below created fog over the treetops. The screams and expletives increased. The truck got closer. My brother had disappeared down a bend in the road. A thought popped up in my mind that maybe my father was right when he said that my problem was that I was afraid of everything, and that if I just made an effort to overcome my fear, I could do many things that I thought I couldn't do. What if he was right? It wasn't as if the yellow truck would stop. I started pedaling faster, feeling immediate relief as I put distance between me and the yellow truck. My speed, aided by gravity as I went down the slope, increased rapidly. For a moment, I believed I would make it. Then it happened. The front wheel of my bike hit a sharp stone on the road, and I flew through the air, propelled by the impact. I was headed right for the abyss, feeling nothing but the sensation of being suspended in the air. A large boulder stopped my fall. There was a moment of stillness, and then a curtain of red falling from my forehead in front of my eyes. I heard the truck stop next to me, and my mother got out, a wad of pink toilet paper in her hand, while my father sped down the road in his yellow truck to go fetch my brother. When we got home from the emergency room, my father apologized to me for the first time in my life. I didn't know it then, but it would also be the last. He seemed really regretful and admitted that he had put me at risk and that he caused this accident by chasing after me with his truck. It gave me hope. Until then, I had not believed him capable of admitting to mistakes or of feeling any compassion toward others. He was loving and gentle with me that afternoon for about 2 hours. By nighttime, he had become more hateful and meaner than ever before. From that day on, things would only get worse. This happened in 1974 in the little country of Ecuador. So the reason I wanted to share this story from my book, Room by Room, Feng Shui Secrets for a Happy Life, is that I want to talk with you today about how family stories are retold over the years. In the story I just read to you, I had a bike accident that was caused by my father chasing after me with a yellow truck, and I was in this little tiny bike that was an antique. It did not have good suspension, it did not have any gears, and it didn't have brakes. And I was forced by my father to go down a really steep, dangerous road in the Andes Mountains right next to an abyss, right? And so when I had this accident and we went to the emergency room and then we went home, for a little bit he was nice and he apologized to me and I was so surprised. But by nighttime, he was meaner than ever. And over the years, he would retell this story with this very important variation. He would start saying, I feel so sorry about the time because of it was my fault that Moni had the bike accident and hurt her forehead. Of course, because I have a scar over here. And so sometimes he'd look at the scar and then he would start talking about it and say, I feel so sorry. But the thing, what changed over time, that first day he was sorry that he caused the accident. From the next time he told it on, he wasn't sorry about having caused the accident. He was sorry about just one thing. He was sorry that he did not notice, he said, that the stones on the road had changed from the cobblestones to sharp-edged stones, and not having calculated accurately that the tires of my bike were too small compared to the rocks, and that those rocks would make my bike jump too much. First of all, as he was chasing on his truck behind my bike, and he was so close, that I could feel the radiator heat spluttering and scalding my thighs. When that was happening, I was telling him, the road has changed, the rocks are sharp, my bike is jumping. I was telling him all these things, and he didn't listen. But the interesting thing is that as he retold this story, that's the only thing he regretted. He didn't regret having put me at risk by making me go down a dangerous mountain road. He did not regret chasing after me on his truck and getting so close that he scalded my thighs. He did not regret that he caused the accident. The only thing he regretted is that he miscalculated the size of the rocks on the road. And as time went by, there were more modifications to the story in his perception, right? And this was often triggered because he looked at the scar. It's faded now, and I have to get really close to the camera for you to see it. And so he would be concerned about what other people would think about it. For example, if somebody else noticed the scar and asked what happened, why I had a scar, he was concerned about how he would be perceived if the story came out and somebody was judging him for having caused the accident, right? And so I would like for you to tell me about a story in your life, some story in your life, that things happened in a certain way and then family members changed the story later on. And a lot of the times family members will change the story, will retell the story to make themselves look better and the other person look bad. And so one of the reasons I want to share this story is not because the way he and my father changed the things he regretted, right? The first day, the same day that the accident happened, he regretted having caused the accident. He admitted to that. But from then on, the only thing he regretted was miscalculating the comparison in size between the stones in the road and the bike. But also because over time, he would bring it up, and usually during family reunions or holidays, he would bring up the story to make the point that I was such an ornery child that only the most forceful parenting methods work with me. And so he would start by telling the story of how I fell off the bike, how he miscalculated the size of the stones. And then he would say that he had to force me to get on the bike, he had to force me to get on the road because I was fearful and ornery. And what that produced, that I was stubborn and combative. And that I would never do things, especially things that were physical. I would never do things, I would never try something new because I was afraid and feisty, and so I wouldn't listen, so I had to be forced to do things. And then he would move on to talk about how he had to do these things and how it hurt him to have to hurt me. That's how it hurt him to have to scream at me, how it hurt him to have to force me to do things. But it was the only way. And so this was his segue. This story was the lead-in to talk about how difficult I was as a child, which I truly wasn't. And he was very abusive. And so in his mind, he would build these stories to try and make it look to me and to his own mind as I was a bad child. I was like a bad seed. And a lot of effort had to be put into correcting me. And so he had to be abusive because I required it, because I demanded it. So you tell me your stories, you tell me, or tell me what family member was, if there was a family member in your nuclear extended family that would change stories as they went by. And so one of the stories that I didn't put in this book that I kind of wanted to share, but I didn't put it in the book, because I could not tie it in. All the stories in this book has stories of my grandmother's home, my parents' home, and our home, and then what I suggest that you do in your home, and room by room. So we start with the foyer, then the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, and so forth. And so this story that I'm telling you about right now, I didn't put it in the book because it was not tied to any room. And because my father said, I just didn't want to exercise, and I had to be forced to exercise, and I would only exercise as a consequence of abuse. In this mountain roads that I'm talking about, right, you have the roads had been cut off the side of the mountain, so you would see like an almost vertical rocky wall to one side, then the abbeys to the other side, because this was the Andes Mountains, and there was lots of cliffs and very dramatic topography. And so on the sides of the road, you had these plants called pencos, and pencos were very large plants. They kind of look at aloe vera, like if you could take aloe vera and expand it into a giant plant. Those were the pencos. And the pencos, so you imagine the leaf of the aloe vera. At the end of the aloe vera, there was a thorn about this big. So maybe 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches long. And so my father carried one of these thorns from the penco, this aloe vera-like plant. He carried one of those on his dashboard, and he would threaten me with it. And he would do things like this. We would be going somewhere, like on a Sunday, we may have gone to eat out, or we may have gone to visit somebody. And as we were going home, he would take a detour and go into the country. And then he would stop anywhere, and he would take that thorn and tell me run, and then he'd start chasing, and it didn't matter. I could be wearing like dress shoes, and it didn't matter what clothes I was wearing, and he would chase after me, and he would prick me on my rear end with this thorn. And so these were the ideas that he had of how he was helping me, right? So over the years, he would retell these stories, and it was such a pushing of buttons for pain for me, because if he had just let things be, if he had just let the memories fade, it would have been so much easier for me to forgive him. Now, the problem is when people justify their actions, they tend to repeat them. And so if he had admitted, when he was so abusive when I was a little girl, physically abusive, as I grew older, he became more emotionally, psychologically abusive. But when I was a little girl, he was very physically abusive. And so if he had admitted, that was wrong, I shouldn't have been abusive, and then change his ways and just let the old stories lie, like lie down, I don't mean like lie about stories, which is what he did. And so then it would have been easier for me to just forget about it, to let it fade and forgive. But he kept hammering and telling stories, and that was not the only story he distorted. So there were many things, the way they happened, he remembered them different. And in his memories, he justified himself. And it was this lead-in to go take the conversation into this saying that I was difficult, so I forced him to be abusive. And so in justifying himself, he kept repeating the same patterns of behavior. And that happens to any person. If you have done something that you're not proud of, and instead of admitting it and apologizing for it truthfully from your heart, if you try to justify this thing that you did, and the only way to justify the thing that you did is by making the other person look bad in your own mind, and then that makes you more prone to do these bad things again. And so that is one problem where sometimes families get into these negative feedback loops where they keep provoking each other and keep sending things down like a dwindling spiral down, instead of getting over those patterns or starting behaving in a healthier manner to each other, right? And so I want to tell you another story, and this is not my story, this is the story of someone I know. And so this gal, she was, she was maybe 8 years old, and her family went on a family vacation with another family. And so when they got together, they had rented a cottage by the beach, a super nice trip. Now the other family brought a snack and some cupcakes, the kind of cupcakes that you buy at the store. They were not homemade cupcakes. And the other family brought this, and this little girl, she tried the cupcakes and she loved them, and so she was asking for the cupcakes all day long, every day, for the 2 weeks they were there on vacation. So by the end of the vacation, she had put on weight. And before, she wasn't skinny, but she was also not heavy. So by the end of the visit, she was overweight from eating too many of these cupcakes. And so her mom took a picture of her in her bathing suit, with a bulging belly. When they got home, the mom had that photograph enlarged because she thought she looked so cute, right? And so as she became an adult, a grown woman, moved out of home, started her own life, the mother always kept that photo on her mantelpiece. And so every family reunion, every holiday, when this gal comes home to visit her mother retells the story of how she turned herself so fat in just 2 weeks from becoming crazy about this particular type of cupcake. And then the mom uses this story to show that she was always, from an early age, she was kind of out of control with food. And the reason she's doing it, I think, is because it was her fault. She, as the mother, should have been controlling what her daughter ate and how much of it she ate. She should have been watching, and she didn't. And this gal thought maybe, over time, because from that time on, when she never had a problem with weight before, from that time on, she always had a weight problem. She was always struggling to get herself fit, to lose weight. And so the mom probably had some guilt that she allowed this to happen, that this happened on her watch. But she transforms the memory in that way so that she can feel not so bad about it, right? So I want to hear your family stories. I want you to tell me the stories, the things that happened that your relatives remember as if they happened differently or if they interpret them differently. Now, in Feng Shui, there's a life area that is called health, family, and community. So these things are tied. Any health challenges that a person may be experiencing, they are tied to family. Because from family you don't just get your genes, right? You get patterns of behavior, you get patterns of thought, and patterns of emotional responses. And so share with me if there are any stories, any family stories that got distorted or changed over the years, and how you felt about them. And also share with me the main emotion that you feel when you get together with family members. What is that main emotion that you feel when they bring things up that are hurtful to you, or when they tell stories in ways that are different from what they happened before? And I'm going to finish with this. We went to Native American reservation it's called Cherokee, North Carolina. So we interacted with Native Americans, and from reading information about Native Americans, I learned about this, that they had a custom that whenever they had festivities, the tribe would they would gather around a huge fire, and the warriors in the tribe would tell stories, and they would tell these stories, and they had to, there were stories about their feats in battle, and so they had to be accurate. And if they ever tried to aggrandize, if they were ever not accurate, because they had to tell and retell these stories every year, right, at this time during the celebration. So the elderly women of the tribe, they were ready with dirt in their hands, and if some warrior tried to exaggerate what he did or tried to change the facts of the way they heard the story the first time, the old woman would take that dirt and throw it in their mouth, and that was a symbol of saying, you're lying, that's not true. You need to keep your words clean by telling the truth. And so share with me if there's any family member that whenever you get together with them, family reunions, holidays, or just to visit, that you feel like you had a clump of dirt in your hand to throw in their mouth and say, hey, you're lying. And so that's what I want to share with you today. The book, Room by Room, Feng Shui Secrets for a Happy Life, is full of stories of my grandmother's home, my grandpa's home, and our home that illustrate the importance of Feng Shui room by room. And the book is available on Amazon as a paperback and as a Kindle book. Well, again, my name is Moni. I'm a Feng Shui consultant, and what I do for a living is that I help my clients turn their current homes into their dream homes, so they can start living their dream lives and realize their full potential. As they work with me, and we do it with a subscription month by month, so we stay in very close contact, and we do the work at the client space, and the result is a home the client loves and a life they love that they're living in that home. And so your home could be right now your hidden enemy, and I can help you turn that home, change the relationship with your home from it being your hidden enemy to being your BFF, your best friend forever. And so if you'd like me to share with you more about my services, and again, I do it month by month. I don't do the type of consultation where you just go to a person's home or have an online meeting with them for a set amount of time and then leave them with a set of instructions and forget them. We stay in very close contact online. It's a month by month subscription. It's very affordable. So if you'd like me to share with you about that, let me know in the comments, and I'll send you the link where you can learn about my Feng Shui consultation program online, which is called the Feng Shui Immersion Program. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.